Okay, I'm having a conference call, a very interesting call, about a subject I am really, really interested in. And I'm going to find answers and solutions, I'm sure, from cellist conductor Eric Jacobsen. Raise your hand. Eric. There's Eric.
Hello, how are you?
Eric Jacobsen and Mark Halstead, executive director, yes?
Yes.
Of the Greater Bridgeport Symphony. We're talking Bridgeport, Connecticut, a city of a little over roughly 100,000 people, something like that,
About 150.
about
Hmm.
150,000. Eric is music director and a fabulous cellist. We get the the goodies down here in a second. We're going to talk about the orchestra's 2019-2020 season coming up, and I'm curious. I want to know about these orchestras. I live in a community with a wonderful regional orchestra. I am seeing major artists, and Eric is a major artist working with these orchestras, regional orchestras, and I want to know why. I know the answer, but you're going to tell me anyway. So that's the goal here. So let's just review very quickly. Cellist conductor Eric Jacobsen, Juilliard grad, not bad, and founded with his brother Colin, and I remember you two on several concerts in Santa Barbara, and good friends, the ensemble Brooklyn Rider, which is excruciatingly famous now, and also what was the quartet?
That was the quartet
Brooklyn
Brooklyn
Rider
Rider.
was the quartet, and then and you've done for barge music and so on. But and you're artistic director of the Silk Road project. Stop me when I'm wrong. Uh, uh,
I'm not an artistic
oh,
director of the Silk Road Ensemble, but I am a member, as is my brother. My brother being a founding member, and really since Yo-Yo started that project 20 years ago now. And
wow.
yeah, Colin and I, along with our quartet mates, started Brooklyn Rider about 15 years ago, and I left that quartet about 3 years ago because more or less, got the conducting bug and decided, uh, realized that if I was going to be a conductor, if I was going to be someone that could communicate as as a music director on a podium, that it actually was going to take as much effort as it was to become a good cellist.
Wow, you jumped the gun on me on that one beautifully. I had the same experience with, I was a clarinetist, didn't like the instrument very much. I went to Cal
Yeah,
Arts. Richard Stoltzman was my clarinet teacher, and at the moment, and I had been, conducting since I was 16, the Youth Symphony here in Santa Barbara. Anyway, bottom line is
yeah.
when Richard Stoltzman said, now we're going to make reeds, that was when I said, now I'm going to become a full-time conductor. So I
Ah, I
understand,
love that.
Eric, this has been so the bug has you, and we know that you are artistic director, music director, and conductor of the Orlando Philharmonic. Now that's a big city. Orlando's a pretty big sized city these days, yeah.
Absolutely, it's
You
a
know,
wonderful city.
and also and Greater Bridgeport Symphony, of course, which we're focusing on. But the Arkansas Symphony is that a guest conducting gig coming up? Virginia Symphony, I saw on your resume. So you're starting to, get crazy here, right?
I love going to different orchestras. I feel like being a guest conductor, being a guest, or a guest leader or a guest conductor, a guest to a city is a very special thing because you show up and you meet these musicians that are so wonderful, and you meet them quickly, and all of a sudden, within 5 minutes of meeting some of them, you're playing, this major work of art, and how you figure out the communication really quickly is quite fun. But to tell you the truth, the only reason I really love that is because it's a diversified portfolio. I feel like I'm a music director, and that's because I love to be committed to a community and to get to know people and build relationships. I'm super engaged in philanthropic giving in the communities that I work in, because that is one of the biggest things that we all have to be a part of to make music happen in America. And I think building relationships on all sides and all parts of both the community and the orchestra is what sort of draws me to being a music director.
Mark Halstead, it's time for you to tell us
Time for me.
how on earth did Eric fall into your sphere? I know it was 2014. The very famous conductor for many years with the orchestra. Things changed. Did he retire or pass?
Yes,
Meyer.
Gustav Meyer retired
Retired.
in 2013, the end of the season. And then we had a full season of getting guest conductors in with, and I was actually just joining the board at that point. But so for a while I was filling out the forms, and after a while I was collecting the forms. I served two roles. But I'll tell you a quick story about a very slushy, snowy, horrible night in December 2013. Everybody else got good weather, but not Eric. And our big 1,400 seat house had about 218 people. The choir from the local high school that was supposed to be part of the program, they stopped the buses. So there's this hardy group of freezing people in the auditorium. And there's Eric. And Eric's having this great time. And he made lemons out of lemonade, is the only way to put it. So quickly, he got everybody. He got that audience. And I think that the only thing that was sad about it was how many of our regulars couldn't be there to see what he did, because he put together. I know, Eric, you on the spot. You had.
And this was the only reason I became the music director, because I only had to pay off 280 audience members. Had they all shown up, I would have been in debt. Like
more difficult, yeah, exactly.
Well, there was a slight bribe. He actually at one point asked, I forget what the choral piece was, but you asked everybody, all the males in the audience, to get up and come and sing in front of the stage. So it was this community sing at the symphony, and it was this bonding night for the audience, and everybody came away and said, that guy was really something, because he had so little to work with. And it was a great concert. It was a fun concert. And I think that sort of fun was a big element in people choosing Eric, because we realized this was going to break ground. This was going to bring in a new audience. This would enliven. It was a great symphony, no question, a loyal following. But he came along at just the right time.
Strangely and oddly enough, yeah, exactly. And the orchestras. Let's kind of jump ahead a little bit. So that was the audition. What an audition, and what an advantageous audition by ironic circumstance of
unusually so.
Eric arrives and apparently decides, well, I better make the most of this. And you guys all, those of you who trekked to the hall had a wonderful evening together, and that I presume did it. Once you've done something that heroic on Eric's part, you're set. The Bridgeport Symphony, we're looking at 1945. The war has ended. I'm thinking Santa Barbara Symphony, I think, dates to about 1952, maybe 1950.
Mm-hmm.
So the end of the war, lots of regional orchestras kind of either put themselves back together after the war,
mm-hmm.
or came into existence. For Greater Bridgeport Symphony, that was the founding of first time for an orchestra in 1945.
Well, we'd been a WPA project, Arts Project Orchestra, since 1934. And of course that faded away about 1940-41. And then we were reincorporated in 46 and had our first concert as Connecticut Symphony Society in 1947. And we've been going ever since.
And at what time did you guys, you as an executive board or as a board of directors decide, let's pay these people? I presume in the 40s and 50s.
It was always a paid orchestra.
Oh, really?
Always
from the very beginning? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So does that speak to the community of Bridgeport in that there is, forgive me, but there is money in Bridgeport?
No, there's no money. Let's put this a different way. In 1946, Bridgeport survived the war boom in a big way. It was a huge munitions manufacturer. Everything was made in Bridgeport. And by 1975, most of those industries were gone. And with it, of course, went the corporate funding. It was understood in 1946 that having an orchestra in Bridgeport was important to the cultural life of the city. So the businesses gave. Interesting little tidbits, though. I love reading old minutes of meetings from 1952 or 1966 when the money ran out again and again and again. And we're not there. We're doing better than they were doing, 52 or 56 or 66. And I think that's testimonial to sort of a hardiness of what Gustav Meyer did for so many years and carried the orchestra through some very tough times, changing times, where people were no longer interested in orchestral music to the degree that they were, and brought us. He really is instrumental in bringing us to this decade. in the meantime, we always had a loyal following. So even today, most of our support is private support. We have a few wonderful family foundations that have been with us forever, and they are incredibly generous. But as far as corporate support, it almost doesn't exist anymore. We're always talking to businesses, and they always say it's a great thing you're doing, but even corporate support has its limits on what they can do. And if I hear we don't give to arts organizations one more time, I may just burst out crying, because it's the great excuse that they have for sort of politely shutting the door. Well, we give to a lot of things, but not arts organizations. But that
Eric,
also...
can I just interrupt for a little bit, because I kind of would like to have Eric's point of view about this, and let us not, because I am extremely optimistic. That's why I'm talking to you. I see orchestras all over the place that I've never even heard of. I see audience, and I know it's always a struggle, always, always, always. And we're also dealing with an audience that has. I mean, I took music appreciation courses in 7th grade. Those don't exist anymore, you know. So just if I can just ask Eric, Eric, what are you seeing out there? Are you're feeling good, right? There's plenty going on. Things are getting better, but it's always tough.
There's so much going on. I think the world has changed so drastically in the last 20 years in terms of consumption of music and the ways we do that. Obviously, in the last 50 years, public school education has changed drastically. Music in churches, music in schools, all these things have changed. And I think we're at a time when we're questioning a lot of things and what is important for a community, and how can we as an organization give to a community, and dare I use that word that we all need to be aware of, but be relevant and make ourselves actually something that people not only think they should hear, but actually want to and need to be a part of. Be a part of listening, be a part of sitting in the hall, being together. I'm very confident that people love music. We know that, right? And I think now making it sort of a slightly adjusted and changed world, where the concert hall where you see an orchestra play is not necessarily what it's been over the last 100 years. And of course, there are certain things from the good old days that we'd all love to have back. And then there's certain things that, we possibly have more opportunities now to grow the art form, because, one of the things is because certain composers and classical music education might not be as prevalent in schools or in upbringing. Maybe that makes it possible for new or current composers, soloists, and so on, to be engaged in a new way that communicates directly with people, opposed to the Beethoven and Mozart are great, Stravinsky's crazy, and everything after is garbage. I think there's a way, actually, that music today is possibly more open-minded, or people listen to music more open-minded today. It's a possibility. And yes, the struggle to bring people into what we do is one that we have to keep on going to bat for, because the truth is, when you get the hook caught in your cheek and you know how great this thing is, you're just going to keep coming back.
Yeah. And I have a funny feeling there's a reason why you were hired. It's like 124,000% energy and positive motivation. I don't need to tell you this, Eric. And what does that do? Generates interest, energy, enthusiasm, and so on. So that people are willing to learn. And that's really part of the process, to learn about music, to learn about this repertoire.
Absolutely, and it goes the same for me. I feel like I'm regularly learning about human interaction and relationships by playing the music that we do.
Now, Mark? What happens? I'm still wondering a little bit about the sort of administrative structure. I presume that's you.
More or less. There's a great board, though, good volunteers, and a few paid people that do small tasks, such as help us write grants.
Yeah.
We have a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
We have a publicist. So there are a few people that do help, but it's more ad hoc. I am the salaried employee of the Greater Bridgeport Symphony.
Bravo, well
So,
done.
so in a
How,
nutshell, yeah, there it is.
Now let's look at something
And
else.
it's
Let's look at something else a little bit. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Did
no,
you?
no, please.
Okay, just a little something else because it's a kind of a stickler. It comes up now and again. I see situations where music director conductors are subject to a repertoire committee. Eric,
We do have a music advisory committee,
how much freedom do you have
which
in terms
is
of repertoire? How does that work, Eric and the board? How does that exchange work?
Yeah,
I'd say
it's
it's quite
actually a pretty.
cooperative. I mean, that'd be the word I'd use, Eric. I didn't mean to step on you there, but it seems to be a good cooperative relationship that the music advisory committee, which has a wide breadth, that you work things out together so well.
Yeah, I think the truth is there's so much great repertoire that I want to do, whether it's for the first time or for the 20th time. And I feel like Bridgeport is, first of all, very open-minded. I feel like I've brought lots of different projects that have been pushing boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Composers, soloists, programmatic ideas that have really been interesting and different and well received. And I think that's because we've created this trust with each other. More or less, every program that we have does have a major masterwork, if for lack of better term, a piece that is, if you're listening to classical music regularly, you know it. It comes to mind. You have an emotional reaction to it if that particular piece is your favorite or something. And then I think surprise and exploration and spreading it around in terms of what we're listening to is so important for bringing people back to the hall and bringing new people to the hall. Because if you always go to the same restaurant, you always get the same thing, you're going to keep on going back. And what you're talking about is quality. So you go to the same restaurant. Let's say you have a taste that you only want to have that piece of steak. So that, and every time it's cooked perfectly, well, great. And so for us, steak is what that classical music, the pillars are, whether it's a Dvorak symphony or a Tchaikovsky concerto or a Brahms, something like this. And then I feel like what's interesting is if you're curating what's going on at a restaurant or a bar or a music venue, you give something new and unique and colorful that adds to what the entire meal is. So, for example, first concert of this year's coming up season, the 2019-2020 season, we have the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto, one of the great pieces of the repertoire, known to give such an incredible virtuosic twist to the violin with the orchestra. And we know that piece, and we have a young soloist from the community that's playing that. But on the second half of the concert, we have this old world master. We have Kehan Kalhor, who's a Comanche player from Persia. He's flying from Iran to play with us. And he's bringing a piece that he wrote 20 years ago, a piece that is one of the most cinematic and dangerously beautiful and evocative works. My brother wrote a piece for him. My brother actually spent a lot of time in Iran with him, sort of learning more about the culture after their interactions with the Silk Road Ensemble, and wrote a piece to add to that concert. So it's like you have something you know you're going to love, you can taste it, and then the possibility of having, pomegranates for the first time. I use pomegranates because, or walnuts, because, Kehan always says, oh yes, but pomegranates from Iran is just the best. But, you have that idea. It's a flavor, it's a taste, it's a unique experience that is driving people to have a different experience with their ears.
And this is very, very important because we are developing the audience's taste over time. Yeah, it doesn't. That's not a snooty thing to say. It's just we're helping. After all, I remember the Bernstein symphonies when I was a kid. Noise, all three of them. I could not make heads or tails of the three symphonies of Leonard Bernstein. It took me like 20 minutes, 20 years. It took me maybe less to finally hear Mozart in those Bernstein symphonies, and that's it. And trust is very, very important. So clearly,
Yep.
Greater Bridgeport Symphony, with you at the helm, Eric, You are, I hope I'm translating you properly. You are telling me that your audience trusts you, and even your board trusts you. Yeah? Come on, Mark.
Audience, yeah, and I trust them. I know that even bringing them a very, very hard piece of repertoire to play, physically to play, will be accomplished beautifully, and that's hard because it's always a pressure cooker.
Yeah. And also maintaining a high level of quality. If people are hearing lousy music making, they're going to have a lousy impression of classical music. So on. So I mean, this is another secret that I find is so interesting that Bridgeport
Absolutely
has Eric, to see to it that the level is always high and at a high standard, and audiences of course pick that up. We've talked about how the orchestra is organized, and how you Bridgeport and Eric Jacobsen found each other. Tell me a little bit about other special programs, Mark. I know, I was what really grabbed my attention when I was kind of browsing websites was the wonderful interaction that Eric has with young people, with young orchestra musicians. And I founded the youth orchestra in Santa Barbara when I was a kid. I know how important it is for kids to be involved in making music. Do you want to start maybe, Mark, and give me kind of an overview of the outreach programs in the Bridgeport community, and then maybe Eric can jump in and give me kind of an overview of what he sees and hears with young musicians, let's say in particular in the Bridgeport area. So.
Well, we've got some wonderful resources in the area in a youth orchestra that's been about 60 years in the area. One of the first in the country, I think, except for
Wow.
one in West Virginia, I think. Great people. That was actually my introduction to all this through my daughter, and that's a start. And we've had them perform with us. We've in our concerto competitions, those kids come out on top a lot of the time. We've also done a few new things. We're making a very conscious effort in a place like Bridgeport, where music education is one of the first things to get chopped. We are making inroads in the schools and bringing music directly into the schools. Sometimes that's Eric and Debbie Wong, our concert master, and once a year, it's the entire orchestra going into an inner city high school, and the reaction is amazing. These kids have never heard this before. They have had zero experience with it, and yet the cell phones go away in about 3 minutes, and then they're just staring at the stage. They're understanding so much more about why this music is great. Because not just the music either, it's the teamwork that goes into it, it's the talent and the discipline, and they're realizing something about craft that is often lost, I think, these days. So this is something we value very much. We've had a great program the last couple of years where we bring up promising young musicians who work with our GBS mentors all year, and then they play with the orchestra at the end of the season. We've worked with the local choirs, the Fairfield County Children's Choir, who's a wonderful group, and this synergy that happens when we get the kids on the stage. The audience, I think, appreciates that as much as the greatest of the music we play. They love the fact that the community is being engaged and involved. And I hear that at this time of year, especially in my one-man operation in the office. I talk to just about all of our subscribers at this time of year to get them all back. They talk about that nonstop. It's a moment that touches those people.
So you hit something here. Eric, you are involved from time to time when you're able to get to Bridgeport in these kind of outreach activities, yeah?
Absolutely. Whenever the orchestra is actually engaged in it, we do these things where we go, as Mark was saying, into a school and be there on their stage and sort of do, for lack of better term, lecture demonstration, where we try to get students talking and saying things about what they're hearing, a little bit like, I feel this, my emotional reaction is this, because that's what you want. You want people to have that reaction that they may or may not have thought they should be allowed to have, or something like that.
And by the way, just from an administrative point of view, I'm all of the website's going to go up. Eric's website, the orchestra website, all that good stuff is going to go up at performingartsreview.net together with this interview. But what interests me about your website in particular, by the way, has the website been improved a little bit since maybe a half year ago? It looked somehow more engaging. Maybe.
Glad to hear it. It's by accident, I think, but I'll take the compliment.
Okay, I'm happy to give it to you. But bright, large imagery, and all of the issues, all of the programming and everything. Anyway, the site is engaging. I think the website for the orchestra.
I'm very pleased to hear it because I've told from time to time it has too much stuff on it. And of course, just recently we got one of the best things we've had in years because we got the Lark Ascending video right up top, and
I think that was
is
it.
Turning heads everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's what did it. Yeah, I think that's what did it for me as well when I came back to the site, because I don't believe that video of the performance of the Lark Ascending was there before.
And that theater is this hidden treasure. People, thousands drive by it every day. It's just a shuttered building. And this is Eric's inspirations. It brought life into that building, brought music into that building. And I was the recipient of an extra 3 or 4 hours of a solo concert of Colin Jacobsen wandering the theater like a troubadour, playing Lark Ascending in this 3,600-seat theater from 1922. And it was a magical day in my life to have been involved in that kind of an effort. And we're going to do more of them. We're going to do more in Bridgeport to showcase the city, to showcase the cultural life of the city. In some cases, it brings back memories for people, and some of them are very poignant and sad. But on the same time, we're looking, because the theaters are shuttered. But on the other hand, life is still there. There's something there.
Let me see if I understand about this theater. It had been shuttered, and Eric kind of sort of discovered it, or nobody had been using it, or how'd that story go? What's that?
Oh, it's been there for a lot of people in Bridgeport know about it. But when Eric got inside, he just said, "We got to work here." And I'll let you talk about that, Eric. What your impressions were?
Yeah, it's one of these beautiful old theaters built. How long ago, Mark? Was it 90 years ago?
It's almost 100, 1922.
So a movie house, a big old, wonderful, ornate art deco movie house. Yeah.
Exactly. Early movie house, burlesque house, not burlesque, but vaudeville house. Yeah.
Yeah, and we went in there looking at spaces. I have this idea to do more of these videos that will sort of bring out different colors and textures of the city. We saw this space. Mark brought me on sort of a walking tour of the city, and Bridgeport being one of the great cities of the Northeast for many years, and similar to I guess you'd call it Rust Belt cities in some ways. Yeah. When industry started to fail or leave, it really affected the city. But there are these theaters that existed in the heyday. This theater is just absolutely stunning, and whether it can be brought back to life someday as a show theater is something special. Not that we thought we were going to necessarily be advocating or having an effect on that, but there's something beautiful about taking a piece of music that is about rejuvenation or possibly death all at the same time, and seeing it put in this space that hasn't actually had live anything, let alone an orchestra in there for over 50 years.
Just amazing. I had no idea, because I've seen the picture of the hall. It's on your website. It's just stunning. And by the way, that's what dynamic new personalities and influence people have on a community. Eric has, and I knew it the minute I saw that Eric was involved with this orchestra. Am I wrong? Come on, Mark. Eric has ignited interest. How's that since 2004? That's
a beautiful word, and very true, very appropriate. I'm gonna steal that from you and put that on the website somewhere.
Okay, thank you. I feel better. What I was starting to say was I love, and I guess we better rewind it down here a little bit. I'll ask you what I've forgotten to ask you about. But what I loved is, and I think it's very, very important, not to overdo, but I saw a very interesting page that is a circle graph breakdown, where how the money comes in, where it goes out, how that all works, and some people say, oh, it's none of the public's business. All these years people have had
absolutely the public's business.
But it certainly is the public's business, especially, and I assume the orchestra is set up in a non-profit framework. Yes. So I'm very impressed with that, and it is a very realistic way to give the public who think, oh, they get together and make music and have happy time, and what's that about, paycheck? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I think there's still a number of people that come in the door and think, well, it's a nice group of volunteers we got here, very talented.
Well,
we have about a $500,000 budget a year, which means, what is our product? That means 5 concerts, it's $100,000 a concert. That's the long and short of it. That's what we have to put together every year.
Yep, and people wonder. The public at large is not clear that musicians professional musicians particularly, are compensated for their efforts. So anyway, I salute you for that. What have I kind of forgotten? We've had a little look at the outreach in the community to youth. We've talked about this wonderful concert venue. The season is 4 concerts, all titled. I used to think that was crazy when I was, 5. Now, what's the 5th? Is that summer concert? Because I see 4.
No, that's it's with the guest conductor Chelsea Tipton this year. That's our final concert, April 18th.
Okay. Thank you. 5 concerts annually, and we've already discussed the budget. It ain't cheap. Every time you sit 30, 40 musicians, professional musicians down for a couple rehearsals, I presume, probably a couple rehearsals, probably not a whole lot more than that.
Oh, 3, 4, this
really?
year 5.
Eric, how did you pull that off?
Many more than 40 or 50 too.
I like rehearsing.
Wow, you pulled that out. See the influence you have. It's like, I need 8 rehearsals for the ball. And Bridgeport says, oh yes, indeed. What else do you need?
I think the orchestra is committed to excellence, and we work very, very carefully to create schedules that really fit musicians and the orchestra and the city. So we're just very attuned to help make sure no one's ever feeling like they're not being used, meaning they're just sitting around and waiting. And we find ways to program smaller pieces and bigger pieces together so everything gets its time.
Yep, and that's budgeting as well. Small pieces, large pieces, you know what I mean? So for example, this year we'll do a Mahler symphony, therefore we'll do chamber music the other, a couple of concerts, something like that. Fascinating. What have I forgotten to ask you? Eric, what do you need to tell me that I've forgotten to ask you about with this orchestra?
These are all really good things. I feel like Bridgeport is growing both artistically as a city and so on. And I think we're just, working towards this, I'd say, high point where we don't even know what that is. I feel like, luckily, Mark and I probably won't be around with the orchestra when this group is actually at its best place. And I feel like Mark and I have a similar idea, which is no matter what, the group has to be better than us when we're run out of town with pitchforks. Like we need to build, we need to structure it, and we need to really take on every possibility. When musicians are beautiful, board members are beautiful, how do we actually bring everyone together and the community to find that joy that happens from making music?
Your best, what is your, what do you call it, wish bucket? What's missing and what do you need in the next grand 5-year plan?
A couple of millionaires that would fall in love with us and just throw money at us from the front row would be wonderful. But I want to build on something that you and Eric both said, and that was a few years ago we did a Mahler symphony, and we had 78 musicians on the stage. And I remember Eric and I having a long talk at one point and saying, when we do a Mahler symphony, that we can't do a small concert some other time. We need to be ambitious, and ambition costs a lot of money, but we need to be ambitious about making this symphony. Every concert is an event. It's something special. It's big. I do remember years ago taking my mother to a symphony, and it was a small group. And you could tell. You walked in, there were 32 seats on the stage. She said, "Oh, it's one of these," she said. And that rang with me because I think our audience is getting very into the fact that we usually put on a very big orchestra. We have at least 50 most of the time, sometimes 60, 70, and the sound is so amazing and the space is great for it and the music is so inspiring. And we can't back up. We can't back off of being ambitious about let's make every concert the greatest one we've ever done. And I hear that my favorite part of an evening at a concert, no offense, Eric, not the music is my favorite part, but I love being in the lobby afterward, and I love hearing people come out. And you know what they say almost every time? That was the best concert you ever had. And that happens again and again and again. And it makes me feel like we are doing the right thing here. We are aiming at something bigger than ourselves, and something that can really help a city that needs it, and in a whole region that needs us, and get to those youth and make those lives better. We can do this with music.
Excellent. That was one of the best speeches I've heard in a long time. Thank you very much. My heart is
Yeah,
palpitating.
you like the website too? I'm having a great night.
But you have put in a nutshell that risk is a good thing. Risk is important. Otherwise, if you fall into boring, you're going to lose your audience. It's just as simple as that. So risk is important. And then, of course, having dynamic leadership, and obviously you have that with Eric Jacobsen.
You sure do.
Fantastic. And a high level of musicianship and with professional music. It's funny.
Unbelievable.
Just stunning. So we're going to end it. I'm going on 35 minutes here. I'm way over. Eric Jacobsen, cellist, conductor. In this particular case of the Greater Bridgeport Symphony Orchestra, Mark Halstead, executive director and apparently chief cook and bottle washer of the Greater Bridgeport Symphony. What a great pleasure talking to you, and I hope that this video, it's the whole point of these videos, is as I speak with more and more regional orchestras and their conductors and their boards, just to first spread the word that things are great, stuff is moving, activities all over the place. Classical music is not dead by a long shot, and it's hard. You got to pay the bill.
Yes, it is.
It's
worth every
a
minute.
constant
Every
thing.
minute.
Anyway, Greater Bridgeport Symphony Orchestra is a stunning example. I can't wait to let people know about your orchestra, and we'll chat again. Maybe I'll get a chance to talk to Eric about some of the other activities and orchestras he's working with in the next couple, 3-4 years, so that I can help people understand that it's a big, vibrant classical music world out there. We are in good shape. It's getting better. Don't believe the naysayers and the doubters. Okay?
Come on over from Santa Barbara. It's not that far. 4 or 5 hours on a plane. No big deal. You'll be welcome.
No big deal. Yeah, I'll do it in no time with my 82 Volvo. No problem. Okay, listen, Eric and Mark, thanks very much indeed for giving me some time. We're done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thanks.
All right. See ya. Thanks, Dan.
Okay.